What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. In the last video, we left with some bad news. Luckily, the Gladiator is good to go. It turns out it was another rip coil pack that was causing the misfire. So we're going back to stock. That way the Jeep will be happy. We also have been working on the LS swap on Cassie's Jeep and it's coming along good. Guys, it is really close. It's ready for a test fire and to wrap up that build. Now the Charger, that's fixed too. Took it to a body shop, got replaced, no issues at all. It's looking brand new. Now I know you guys are excited to hear how much did it cost to swap in a 6.4 liter Hemi into my Jeep Wrangler. So in this video, we're gonna answer some of your most common questions. First off, how much did it cost to do a DIY Hemi swap? And the second most popular question so far is what's your miles per gallon? So we're gonna go over all that in this video. There's so many different ways you can do a DIY Hemi swap, and there's a few different options depending on how you want to build it and what exactly you want to do. I have close to 800 miles on this setup so far, and there are a few lessons learned. There's a few things I've changed, and there's a few things that I do want to change in the future. So in this video, we have a lot of talking to do, but hopefully it's gonna help you guys out if you're planning to do this swap or just thinking about it. Let's get started. I really want to start off the video telling you guys how much it cost me. However, there's so much more of a backstory to it and stuff we need to talk about. So this is something I've kind of been saving up for the past 2 to 3 years. It's been on the back of my mind. I've always wanted a big V8 inside my Jeep. Now, do you necessarily need, 485 horsepower inside of your Jeep? Not exactly, but is it really nice? Yes. It's not exactly what everybody thinks it is. They're thinking, man, who needs that much power in a Jeep? They're meant to go slow, they're meant to crawl, they're not meant to be like a drag car. Guys, having that much horsepower in a Jeep is not like having this much horsepower in a car. Comparing this Jeep to our Charger, which also has a 6.4, they both drive completely different. You have to think, my Jeep is right off the bat, it's a 4-door Jeep, it's heavy. We added 1-ton axles, 40-inch tires, bead locks. This thing is pretty heavy. I guess it's close to 6,000 pounds. We're gonna have to add it up someday. I'm actually curious now. We'll do a video on that. But it was slow. It's so slow. Before the Hemi, I had the 3.8 liter with the 6-speed manual transmission. And I could drive it good. It would do 75, 80 on the highway, but it was definitely struggling. Off-road, it definitely did fine. With the 6-speed and the 538 gears, I had no issues really doing whatever I wanted with it. I drove all the way out west for the Power Stop Trail to SEMA, did a bunch of trails out there, drove all the way home. Clearly, I didn't exactly need a V8 swap, but it was something that I wanted. So is a V8 swap exactly needed? No, not really. But is it fun? Heck yes. The Jeep is so much more fun to drive now. It has the power to do whatever you want with it. If you're just cruising, it has perfect power down low. If you want to get on it to pass some jerk on the highway, you're gonna smoke them. I have a funny story about that. We'll talk about that in another video. But yeah, I showed a big old diesel truck guy rolling coal what a Jeep can do. He was really surprised. Like I said, I've been saving up for this swap for quite a while now, and luckily I was finally able to do it. And guys, if you do it yourself, you might be surprised on how cheap this is. So the first important part of a V8 swap is to decide, do you want to do an LS swap or a Hemi swap? There are tons of videos out there on doing LS swaps, and when it comes to swapping it into a Jeep Wrangler Jk, the Hemi swap is much easier to do at home. If you've been watching my videos, you guys could tell that this went together really quick with not much work at all. I think if I wasn't making videos, I'd probably be able to do this in just a few weekends at home with common tools, really. So this time, compared to my 1-ton axle swap video series, everyone's like, man, do you have a full parts list of what you used? This will be in the video description, and it has all of the parts needed for this swap with included links. So hopefully that'll help you guys out, and it's all itemized. That way you can kind of see what I did and how to do it. So right off the bat, first things first, when you're doing a Hemi swap, I'd suggest a Hemi swap. Man, I'm already losing track. We were talking about Hemi versus LS. The LS can be cheaper, but there's more integration needed for the swap. If you do plan on going LS, I would suggest buying a full kit from a company with everything needed. Now, the reason I went Hemi is because, first off, I got a good deal on the engine, but it works better with the Jeep, and there's less kind of integration involved. For an LS, we have to have, CAN bus adapters, transmission adapters. There's all this kind of stuff that you're reliant on the company to still sell those in the future. 5 years from now, if I did an LS swap and I'm having an issue with one of those CAN bus connectors, I better pray that they're still in business and they still have them in stock. With the Hemi swap, you can kind of find everything online, Mopar part numbers, you're all good. There's a few exceptions here and there, but there's nothing critical. So where do we go from here? Guys, the first thing we're gonna talk about is the engine. Now, you guys remember I picked up a steel on my engine. It was a 6.4 with the NAG1, a Rubicon transfer case, bolt-in motor mounts for a JK radiator. It came with an ECM and wiring harness, all for $10,000. Now, sadly, I couldn't use half that stuff. The transmission was for a 2012 and up JK. That's your standard NAG1 that came with the Jeep, and people reuse those in these Hemi swaps, and the transmission can handle the power. All you have to do is change the bell housing, change the torque converter, and you're good to go. Now, that transmission is sitting over there. I'm not gonna use it, so I'm gonna recoup some money by selling that. $2,400, that's a fair price. Also, the Rubicon transfer case that came with that transmission, I wasn't able to use that, so I sold that for $1,600. Now, after selling those two items, that means my engine cost was $6,000 for a brand new 6.4. When it comes to getting an engine for this swap, there's so many different choices. You could do the big boy 6.4, or you could do the 5.7 Hemi, which is more than enough for this Jeep. If I didn't find this deal on this 6.4, I would have went with the 5.7. They're easier to find, and if you do want to buy one brand new, they're a little bit cheaper. The engine cost is going to play an important role in this swap and how much your total cost is. Luckily for me, my cost was pretty low, but for you guys, if you're planning to do the swap, either buy a brand new engine. You're gonna have to remember that you're gonna need all the accessories. So your water pump, your alternator, power steering pump, all of that stuff doesn't come on a brand new engine. Whereas if you buy a used engine, all that stuff will be on there, but it's important to make sure you open up the engine and make sure it's good running, low miles, and there's really nothing wrong with it. So the engine is gonna vary widely depending on what you get. But what is not gonna change is the Jeep Speed Shop swap parts that I used. So the ECM was $1,100, the wire harness was $1,500, the engine mounts, the bolt-in engine mounts cost $440. I already had those. The steering relocation bracket that we had installed was $25. The 8-speed kit was $1,500, and our Camaro fan shroud and controller was $650. Total that up, $5,200. So that's like the base cost of what we're gonna have no matter what for this swap if you plan on using the 8-speed. I itemized it. When I bought the stuff from Jeep Speed Shop, I didn't buy their full kit. Their full kit is $6,200, and that comes with the AC lines, our fuel lines, the 5.7 intake, etc. So there are multiple ways to do this, as you guys can tell, but I saved a little money there by kind of itemizing it. I also have mentioned the Jeep Speed Shop's doing 10% off if you call in to place your order and mention all these videos. So that's good, he's helping you guys out. So that's the baseline for the conversion kit parts. I've had a lot of people asking me, man, Ben, what do you think about the AEV kit or the Dakota Customs kit or all the other different kits on the market? Well, I have a few prices right here. The AEV conversion kit for my year Jeep was $7,700 and it is not in stock. The 12 to 15 kit was $8,800. The standard Jeep Speed Shop conversion kit to reuse your transmissions, $4,000. And the 8-speed Jeep Speed Shop conversion kit is $6,200. Dakota Custom somehow is $10,000. I don't know what in the world they get. I don't know how they get that. That's insane. And most your average turnkey Hemi installs right around $30,000, $32,000. Clearly Jeep Speed Shop makes the most budget-friendly swap kit, but what else do we need in order to make sure we are way under that $32,000 installed price? Guys, it's a lot cheaper than $32,000 and it's really not too hard to do it yourself. If you have some basic knowledge, I know you can do it. So far we are at $6,000 for the engine setup, $5,200 for the Jeep Speed Shop swap components, which brings us up to $11,200. But we are not done yet. So this next part, we're gonna walk through the Jeep and prices are gonna pop up in the corner here just for all of the extra stuff outside of the swap kits that we need. So we're just gonna walk around. First thing I am seeing now is the intake. We have to make our own kind of intake setup if we're doing the 6.4. So I grabbed a filter, a intake carbon fiber pipe tube, some couplers. I know you guys love that word. So we made a DIY intake setup. Over here on this side, we had to change out our battery tray. The factory G battery tray just physically does not work with the Hemi. I decided to go budget friendly on that, picked up a Barnes 4-wheel drive battery tray, made that work. Over here, we have a catch can, completely optional. I decided to do it just to keep this engine nice and clean. Up front here, we have a power steering cooler and a transmission cooler. I'm swapping out with the B&M coming up soon, so I included the price of the B&M one. Those are very important to make sure our power steering stays cool and our transmission. To go along with that for cooling, we have an aluminum V8 swap JK radiator. This is from CSF. I got this with my engine setup. However, Jeep Speed Shop sells two options depending on which one you want. Had to pick up some new radiator hoses and a universal radiator like coolant overflow bottle. For the electric fan setup, I went with the Camaro fan setup. So we had to buy an electric Camaro fan online, the Jeep Speed Shop Camaro fan shroud, and the fan controller that actually tells this Camaro fan when to come on. Also have some transmission cooling lines over there that were quite expensive. And we still have a few other small things in the engine bay, such as our DIY fuel lines, the connectors for those, the quick connect kits, and then all of the AN fittings. But that about wraps it up front here in the engine. One of the coolest things about this swap is the fact that we can use an 8-speed transmission with the Jeep Speed Shop conversion kit. The 8-speed is a complete game changer. In the first video of this series, I talked about all the different transmission options, and the 8-speed is definitely one of the best options out of all of those. Now, if you do have a 2012 up JK that is already automatic, you can reuse that transmission to save quite a bit of money. All you have to do is swap out the bell housing and add a new torque converter, and you're good to go. So it's a lot more budget friendly. But for those of us that have anything other than the 12 and up auto transmission, the 8-speed is really worth it. So while we're up here, inside didn't really have to do too many modifications. We had to go with a Dodge Challenger shifter, and that bolted right to the Jeep Speed Shop floor plate after a few modifications. Still have to figure out a shift boot. Got a quote for $100 like custom made shift boot, but for now the Crown roll bag will work. Now, I picked up the transmission itself, Dodge Ram 8 HP 70 on eBay, 30,000 miles, grabbed that. We also had to get a new starter designed for the 5.7. We had to get this little structural plate right here that bolts the lower half of the transmission to the engine, as well as the intermediate plate or dust cover, whatever they want to call it, that goes between the engine and the transmission. Now, we did have to do quite a few modifications to this transmission. First one was tapping the new fittings for our transmission cooling lines. We also had to change a few things on the back here to fit our Jeep factory transfer case. Whether it's Sport or Rubicon, both will fit. We had to get the Jeep Speed Shop transmission plate here, as well as the Dodge Ram transmission mount. So both of those items allowed us to mount it up here on our crossmember. So that's about it for the 8-speed transmission. All in all, everything for the 8-speed is about $3,000, which isn't too bad considering if I was gonna use an older like 545 transmission, it'd probably still be about $2,000 after I gathered all the parts for that to put in here. So that little bit of extra money is definitely worth it. Next up, we have the exhaust. Now, I had to use 5.7 exhaust manifolds on both the left and right side, as well as the exhaust gaskets and bolts for those manifolds. The reason we had to use the 5.7 is because they wouldn't clear the bolt-in engine mounts without like serious modification to the 6.4 headers. Kind of did the rest of my exhaust all by myself. Picked up a kit for 2.5-inch diameter tubing, as well as 3. So, leaving the manifolds, they come down to our O2 sensor. So we had to buy a total of 4 O2 sensor bungs. We welded those in, and naturally we need 4 O2 sensors. It's really important to use Mopar sensors, so that adds up a little bit. After that, we come down to 2 Flowmaster high flow catalytic converters, one on each side. They collect over here to a white pipe, and then the exhaust becomes 3 inches in diameter. I went with the Holly Hooker street chamber exhaust. This thing sounds amazing. Extremely deep, throaty, very nice sound. However, in my neighborhood, cold startups in the morning, it was a little bit too loud, so I added a cheap resonator right behind there, and then the exhaust goes over the axle and dumps out. As you can tell, I'm at to change my evap that broke off in the middle of this swap. That's not swap related, but that is gonna get changed. So as you can tell, exhaust, it took a while to build all that. However, we definitely did save a little bit of money there. There are some options. Jeep Speed Shop sells, the header kit, or he sells a full exhaust. It's all up to you. Another option would be drop this off an exhaust shop and let them do the work. I will say though, I'm extremely happy with how this thing sounds. It's not too loud, but it sounds really mean. According to my calculations, that's pretty much it. We do have fluids to add up. Really, the only crazy expensive fluid was the 8-speed transmission fluid, which came out to be $126, which is quite expensive. You know, of course, we have engine oil and ATF, or our power steering fluid. But all in all, you guys ready to hear the number?
Billions and billions.
I don't know if I should tell you. You guys have stuck around long enough. The total for my swap, are you guys ready? You're either gonna take this in a good way or a bad way. It's still a lot of money, but it's a lot cheaper than paying $32,000 for installed. $15,549 for this swap. So there are a lot cheaper ways to do it, and there's way more expensive ways to do it. You know, all of the small items that we just kind of ran through, those can be found for cheaper or more expensive. You could go with a really expensive intake kit, or you could even go cheaper than what I did. You can use different kinds of things for these swaps, and if you kind of budget it out and spend, you know, your time doing research, you can find better deals. Especially if you have a junkyard around, you know, the transmission cooling lines, for example. I paid $200 for those brand new. If I had a junkyard that had a Grand Cherokee in stock, I could snag those probably for 40 or 50 bucks and save a lot of money there. And that kind of goes all throughout the swap. The longer, or the more you plan for the swap, the more money you can save. Hopefully this parts list that you guys, you know, for those of you doing this swap, if you go through and see what's needed, you can kind of start looking for really, really good deals on what you'll need. Now there is one last piece to the puzzle here, another 20 bucks. So I guess we have to reevaluate the price, but we have to put this somewhere. Guys, let me know. What do you think? $392 up there, $392 down here. I don't know. Or should we even not put it on, keep the Jeep looking like a sleeper? So $15,549, that is amazing. You know, a lot of people are gonna say there's still all your time and labor put into it, and that is true. However, I look at it like this. I enjoy working on my Jeep, and if I didn't come out in the evenings after work and wrench on my Jeep, what else would I be doing? Probably playing video games or something. So it's not like I'm really wasting money. I'm just spending my time doing something else. Now, for those of you that aren't super mechanically inclined, the good thing about Hemi swaps is that it's really not that hard. My video series showed you guys most of the technical parts of it, but for the most part, you pull your old engine out, you get the new one in, pop it in, do all those modifications. So stuff that comes along with that, like you will need an engine hoist. You can rent one from a buddy if you want. You will need a welder. Find a buddy that has a welder or learn to weld. All in all, I was able to do it myself, saving a lot of money, having some fun along the way, and ending up with a super sick setup. So there are a few things we have to finish up, and it's kind of lessons learned. So let's nail through those real quick. I know this video is getting long. So the first thing is the intake. It's sucking up a lot of that hot exhaust. Like the exhaust manifold heat is sucking right in here. My exhaust or my intake temps are pretty high. I could run the filter right here or kind of move it over here. I don't know, we're gonna figure that out. That's something I'm gonna play with. Now I could go with an aftermarket intake that comes straight out and route it over to that side where the factory location was. Sadly, that's just more money. Edelbrock makes one, Holley makes one, and AEV used to make one. They would modify the plastic factory intake manifold and run it over there, but they have discontinued that completely. Now I could get a like a cowl hood that has more airflow right over here. However, I'm kind of worried about that with the water intrusion going right onto the filter. So we'll play around with that. Now I also have to finish my exhaust. I have that flex pipe. That was just for mock-up. I already have the parts to do that. I just have to spend some time to get that mounted. Once that's done and built, we can reattach our transmission transmission skid plate, transfer case skid plate, man, and finish up my AC system. So these are the Jeep Speed Shop AC lines. That way I have AC in my Jeep. Now, there is one more issue that we're kind of dealing with right now. So Jeep Speed Shop sends a tune with the computer that you buy. The issue is that it's a 5.7 tune. So the 07 to 11 Jeeps, we have to use an older style computer for the swap. We have to keep the same style computer that was in your factory Jeep and a same style computer that can run the engine. So this is the NGC4 computer, meaning it's kind of limited. So we're gonna make this quick. I'm gonna talk about it in another video, but this pretty much has a 5.7 tune on it. The 5.7 and 6.4 share very, very close similarities in the tune. The main thing that I'm missing out on right now is the Rev Limiter. So my current setup with this tune on this computer, it redlines right around 5,800, 5,900, and we're missing out on the full potential of the 6.4, which can wind up to 6,400 RPMs. Now, it wasn't really that big of an issue until we swapped in the new valve body. So that original transmission valve body was made for the 5.7 with the RAM. The valve body is what has the computer in it for the transmission, so that has its own tune in a way as well. Now, when we swapped the new valve body in the last video, that had a 6.4 tune in it in order to get more potential, for this engine. What we didn't realize is that with a 6.4 tune on the transmission and a 5.7 tune on the engine, is that they wouldn't be happy together at wide open throttle. So the issue right now is when I floor it, transmission downshifts fine, engine RPM's creeping up, it hits 5,800 and it hangs at redline because the transmission computer is programmed to shift at a higher RPM, such as the 6.4 would, and it doesn't shift unless you let off the throttle. So there's two options. Either change the tune on the transmission to a 5.7 and leave the computer alone, or change the computer tune to a 6.4 so we get the best of both worlds. Now, I will say the tune that Jeep Speed Shop sends out is definitely pretty good. It's California compliant, so it is conservative. You can pass your smog, you can pass emissions without any issue. However, if you want more of a performance tune, this guy, we're gonna have to go either with a different tuner or figure it out. I'm trying to work with Todd from Jeep Speed Shop right now to offer like kind of a hopped up tune so this thing will move. But all of that will be in future videos. We still have to go out, have some fun with it, but I know a lot of you guys were super interested in how I did this swap and how much money did it actually cost. So thank you guys for watching. Please, if you have any questions, go down to the video, go down to the comments, let me know. I'll do my best to answer them. All of this info will be in the video description, and please smash the thumbs up button, and I will see you guys later.